I can't. Dude, I literally, my brain doesn't work today. I can't talk. I'm not even that tired. Oh, yes! Yes, we did it! Let's... Yes! Hey guys, welcome back. The first part of Halo Infinite's second flight just concluded, which means it's time for me to give my brutally, yes, brutally honest thoughts and opinions on what we just played. Now, I will give you a small disclaimer. You can probably tell that my voice is a little bit different to usual. That is because I've barely slept this weekend. I streamed for about 20-25 hours, which should go to show how much I'm enjoying this game. So that alone is a bit of a spoiler for this video. I am really enjoying my time with this game. I have a lot of positive things to say about it, but I've also got some critical things that I want to talk about, some things that I'd like changing, some things that I'd like adding or removing. So yeah, let's jump into the brutally honest thoughts and opinions. So I'm going to start off with mostly the positive things and then move into the more critical things. I'll be honest, the two halves of the video are going to be a bit messier than last time because there's some things that I really like but I would like changing, and there's some things that I don't like but I do like certain parts of them, so it's going to be a bit messy and all over the place. But I mean, it's a feedback video, it's a thoughts and opinions video, that's kind of par for the course, right? So let's start off with the mostly good stuff, right? I just want to reiterate the first point from the last flight. The graphics in this game are absolutely incredible. Like, I've never been one to want Halo to have insane, like, Battlefield Crisis level graphics. I've said that before, but I just continue to be blown away by the level of detail and graphical fidelity in this game. Like, even, like, the art style aside, the art style is absolutely gorgeous, right? But the art style aside, the actual graphical fidelity of this game is unbelievably good. Like, on PC, playing even at like low to medium settings, the maps, the textures on the weapons, on the Spartans, and the terrain detail, the vehicles, the effects for the most part, not all of them but mostly, are all just incredible. This game looks beautiful. Now, the biggest new thing in this flight was the addition of a new map, Behemoth. After my first game of Behemoth, I had this to say. I don't want to seem too overzealous or anything, right? Because we've not even finished the first game on this map yet, but I'm already kind of ready to say this is my favourite Halo map since Halo 3.
Wow.
That, to me, is honestly my favourite Halo map since Halo 3. I can't think, besides maybe the Spire. The Spire is the one map that I can think of that I've liked probably equally to that sim. That is a goddamn sick map. And honestly, I still believe that. I think this is one of, if not the best map since Halo 3. Besides maybe the Spire from Reach. Honestly, Behemoth is genuinely incredible in every way conceivable. The art style is just beautiful. The setting is so Halo. The layout is incredible. Having vehicles in 4v4 again just mixes the entire thing up and makes the game feel so fresh. The gameplay on it as well, the way that the equipment interacts with the vehicles, with the environment, and with the also with the objective pieces as well, is amazing. Behemoth isn't just like a good map. It's not like, for example, in, I don't know, in Halo 4, Haven was like a good map, but that's because it was in a game with loads of like kind of maps. Behemoth is genuinely just incredible. I cannot sing this map's praises anymore. In every way, like I said, the aesthetic, the art style, the graphical fidelity, the layout, everything, the setting, just everyone involved with that map, I owe you all some brisket. And then another thing, like I just mentioned, another great thing about this game is the way that the equipment sandbox interacts with other elements of the sandbox, and also kind of vice versa as well. So the fact that you can bounce heavy projectiles out of man cannons and then redirect them again with a repulsor. We tried it with a few things. You can do that with the rockets, with the Ravager, with the skewer. The amount of in-depth interactions in this game, it's going to lead to so many cool moments that can only happen in a Halo game, and it's so cool to see this again. This is why so many of us have wanted a truly sandbox-focused game for years, and when Halo's kind of deviated away from that in the years past, these are the kind of things that it's been missing, and oh, the level of interaction in the sandbox is so good. Moving on to some smaller things, the new Needler sound is genuinely amazing, for the most part at least. They literally did what a lot of us asked them to do. We said, like, okay, take the current sound and blend it with the classic sound, and they literally did that. The only thing I'd like changing with the Needler is the Super Combine sound. It's not loud enough. I honestly can't really make it out. If you really listen to it, it does sound a bit crystally like Halo CE's, but you can't really hear it, so I'd say bump that sound up a little bit. The Repulsor is, once again, genuinely incredible. I honestly don't know what I prefer out of the grapple shot on the Repulsor now. The ability to essentially have like a pocket rocket jump that actually gives you real height as well, or a pocket projectile deflector. There is so much potential with this thing in regular matches, in competitive and in like HCS matches, in custom games, in campaign. I mean, again, this is one of those pieces of the sandbox where the potential with this is just limitless. My mind just goes crazy thinking about things that you could do with this. There is so much room for this thing to shine, and like, I cannot wait to see some of the sick plays people make with this thing. Very cool to see the Sentinel Beam make its grand return, and it's pretty powerful as well. It's got some pretty insane recoil, but good to see it back. The Cinder Shot was a really interesting nade launcher as well. It felt like a forerunner-y take on the Reach grenade launcher, but it's not the same, it kind of is. So it has an alt fire mode where you can fire like one grenade, but like actually control where it goes in midair, which is really cool. But I feel like that is going to be a lot more useful in big team battles. So for example, I can imagine some really cool scenario where a Banshee's boosting away from you and you fire the Cinder Shot and you track the grenade to the Banshee and hit it. There's going to be some really cool plays with that, but I think it's definitely meant more so for big team battle and vehicle modes as opposed to infantry, because, I mean, to be fair, we did have to do custom game glitches to spawn it, so we weren't meant to be using it in this flight, but the games that I played were pretty hectic with it, so I think it's definitely meant for BTB. The Sniper feels better than last flight, but it's still not 100% there yet. There is one major issue with it that I'm going to talk about later, but I can't really pinpoint what's wrong with the Sniper. There's just something off about it. It's better than last flight, and it felt more usable, but like I said, it's not quite there yet. The Shock Rifle is really cool. The functionality of it is honestly amazing. Like, I actually want them to change it to kind of go into that functionality more. So the unique trait of the Shock Rifle is that, as the name implies, it fires electricity. And what can electricity do? It can be conducted by certain items. So what you can do is you can literally lay weapons on the floor in like a breadcrumb trail and shoot one of the weapons, and they will conduct the electricity, travel along the line of weapons, and then hit an enemy and damage them, or kill them, or EMP a vehicle or something. However, what I want to see is more of a focus on that and less of a focus on just raw damage, because right now it's essentially an electric sniper where like the electricity part of it is cool, but it's like a really minor feature compared to the actual damage because it kills in 2 shots. I would love to see the Shock Rifle be rebalanced and kill in more shots, but have the electricity and the static that comes out of it do more damage and travel further and just have more utility, because that is such a cool idea, and right now it's really cool, but it could just be better. Oh, and also one other really cool thing that is super minor, I don't know how viable this is, but it would be really cool if you could do it. Someone in my chat suggested this over the weekend. What if, with the Shock Rifle, if you say you used like half the charge of a pulse carbine, if you threw the pulse carbine on the floor and shot it with the Shock Rifle to charge it back up, like, it's such a weird thing, right? But I think a little detail like that would be really cool. Going back to visual effects, the new plasma grenade effect is, again, exactly what we all asked for. It looks a lot more kind of, it's gonna sound weird, right? But a lot more like fluffy. Like you can see the burning plasma around it, unlike before where you couldn't. It looks great. As well, the new dynamo grenades are really cool. I'm a big fan of them. I love the physics on them. Like when you throw them, you can almost see the electricity kind of just take over the grenade and start sending it bouncing everywhere. It's got like a really erratic bounce pattern. These things honestly remind me of a balanced version of the power drain from Halo 3, because don't get me wrong, I loved Halo 3's power drain, but come on, that thing was really overpowered. Like it was cool, but it was really overpowered. These are like a balanced version of the power drain. The new overshield effect is great as well. They've gone in a Halo 3 direction where the overshield gives you like this white glow, which stands out really well on the battlefield. It overwrites your overlay color, so you can actually tell when someone's got overshield now. But the only thing I'd change about Overshield is I'd buff it, because this flight, it felt genuinely useless. Like, I'd slam that thing into my chest, and by the time the animation is over, I would have lost like 75% of the Overshield. It seems really weak. I think they should buff it. Moving on to some more kind of random things, I think the training mode is honestly fantastic. It's a great warm-up and kind of time killer mode that I honestly think Halo's needed for quite a while. It feels like a true kind of do what you want sandbox mode, and being able to change so many settings in the game, like what weapons you have, grenades, equipment, how many bots there are, bot behavior, actually in-game without backing out, going back to a menu, changing the settings and starting it again, is really, really cool. It's great for testing out like weapon traits and stuff, and just for kind of messing around and killing time in. I've noticed as well, on Bazaar in particular, they've increased the map ceiling, which is something that I asked for after the last flight, which is great, which means that the grapple is now more effective on it. You can fly higher. However, it's not quite there yet, so the map ceiling seems to have been increased, but at the same time, there's still so many invisible barriers around buildings that kind of start really low, so you can go quite high up, but you're so boxed in that it almost feels claustrophobic. I really, really want them to do what actually they've done on Behemoth, and just remove all of the hard barriers on top of the buildings on Bazaar, and just put soft kill barriers there. So, for example, I can grapple on top of the rooftops and, like true Halo 2 style, run across the rooftops, but say there's like a 7-second kill timer, so I can't just camp up there, like, I can't throw like an oddball or a flag up there and sit there with it or something. Like, I have to actually get down, but you're given enough time to actually go over the rooftops. I think that would make the grapple feel so much more freeing, and it would make Bazaar a lot more enjoyable. The vehicles are absolutely amazing. I love the vehicle physics in this game. The fact that you can control them mid-air. I'll be honest, the vehicles do drive very differently to any other Halo game. They don't feel like any other Halo game, but I think they feel the best out of all the Halo games, honestly. The fact that you can, like I said, turn the vehicles in midair, the fact that the vehicles are really fast, they've got great handling, they feel great to drive. I love that. And I also, as well, love the new vehicle, like, I don't know what they're calling it, the destruction thing, where you can destroy parts of a vehicle, like you can shoot the wings off a Ghost, or you can shoot like individual tires and wheels off a Warthog, and then it drives differently. Like, dude, okay. It's the little things like that that make a Halo game for me. Like, yeah, you can have all these big features and everything, but to me, Halo games are made by the little details like that, and I appreciate this so much. It's such a cool innovation in the vehicle sandbox, and I can't wait to see how it affects other vehicles as well. Oh yeah, another thing, I also love the fact that you can bump the flag with vehicles. Seems a bit buggy. I have a feeling they'll patch that before launch, but I don't care. It was fun to do. And on the topic of vehicles as well, I really, really liked the Ghost in particular. The Ghost was so fun to drive. It felt powerful. It was super nimble and fast. It was honestly powerful as hell as well. Like, so I remember back in Halo 3, I used to play a lot of Lone Wolves back in Halo 3. And on some maps like High Ground, Snowbound, and Isolation, the Ghost was like a legitimate power weapon, right? And ever since Halo 3, that's not been the case. Reach 4, 5 never had that. In Halo Infinite, it feels like that's the case again. The Ghost felt like a power weapon. The only thing I would say was maybe off with it was the splatter physics felt a bit weird, but for the rest of it, I loved it. The sound as well, I swear they've gone back to like a full-on like classic Combat Evolved style with the sound. The actual driving sound and the boosting sound from the Ghost sounds really similar to Combat Evolved's, which is fantastic. I love it. Okay, so let's move on to the more critical stuff now. Like I said, this video is kind of all over the place because I really just want to get my immediate thoughts down into a video and just talk about them as I've experienced them. So probably my main or second main issue with this flight were the servers. They were awful. The connection in the games was terrible. Last flight, I played with Foxy, Actman, Connor, Noah, Chris, full American teams. Games felt perfect. This flight, I played with like an entire UK team with one American person, Halo Cannon on the team, and the game just becomes unplayable thanks to bad hit registration, bad netcode, desync, lag, input delay. It was really bad. I don't know if they changed something about the servers this flight, but it felt considerably worse than last flight. And kind of on the same note, optimization and stability were god-awful this flight. Last flight, the game ran super smooth. I had no issues with stability, with crashes, with anything. This flight, on the other hand, was totally different. So I don't know what happened with this flight. Maybe it's a bug. This could very well just have been a bug with the flight that is fixed in like the final version of the game or something, but it kept causing my GPU to spike to really high temperatures. And what happens when that happens is basically the drive is shut down and the card itself shuts down to protect itself so it doesn't overheat and get damaged, which causes all of my displays to disconnect, which caused my stream to die. And it was really frustrating. It happened a few times. It got to the point where I had to sit here with my air conditioning unit right there, pointed at my PC with the door open on the coldest temperature possible, blasting freezing cold air at my PC so it wouldn't happen. And I wasn't the only one who had this happen as well. I saw other people with this issue, so it wasn't just me, but I had to sit there in the middle of like a mini heatwave in the UK with a hoodie on, like freezing my ass off playing so it wouldn't crash. So I don't know if that's been fixed or not, but I just thought I'd bring it up because it was pretty frustrating. So moving on to more gameplay-based stuff. Firstly, I think this flight, the sidekick, felt a bit too strong and not quite as balanced as the last flight. Honestly, that might be a placebo effect. I don't know if anything's changed, but this flight, the balance felt off on it. It felt far too similar to Halo 5's Magnum in that it was like a powerhouse, like jack-of-all-trades weapon that I could outshoot like BRs or commandos with, whereas last flight, it felt a lot better. I think the sidekick, it needs to be what its name implies. It needs to be a sidearm that has a quick draw time that you pull out, you like one-tap somebody with it, you've made one shot, and then you put it away. That's a cool, unique idea for a weapon, and I think that's what they should be doing with it. The current balance feels too strong. The gravity hammer is just in such a weird place in this game, right? So the physics effects are like all over the place. So I did quite a lot of extensive testing with it this weekend, right? So what's going on with the physics is that they exist for teammates. So if you swing the hammer at teammates, you can launch them. They exist kind of sporadically for environmental objects. So sometimes you'll swing it and environmental objects like crates or bags or boxes will go flying. Sometimes they won't move at all. The physics work perfectly for vehicles. They work like an absolute charm for vehicles, but then there's no physics effects whatsoever for yourself. It's kind of all over the place. Like, again, golden standard for the hammer was Halo 3's hammer. The physics effects for that thing were incredible. Everything went flying. That's the golden standard right there, if you ask me. The sword looked a bit weird, but granted, again, we had to do the custom games glitch to spawn it, so I don't think we were meant to be using it in the flight, so it's probably unfinished. I just thought I'd mention it anyway, but disregard that really, because it's probably unfinished. Now, I mentioned earlier an issue with the sniper, and this is a pretty big issue. So the sniper doesn't have first shot accuracy when you no-scope in this game. So a little bit of like a rundown of what that is. So in Halo 1, Halo 3, Halo Reach, Halo 4, and Halo 5, when you no-scope with a sniper rifle, the bullet will go directly straight, right? It will go exactly where the crosshair's pointed. However, in Halo 2 and Halo Infinite, for some reason, when you no-scope, the bullet doesn't go where the crosshair is. It's almost like there's a bigger crosshair than the one that you can see on the screen that's invisible, that is the true crosshair. So what this means is you can no-scope somebody with your crosshair directly on their head, and the bullet will just miss. There's no way to tell if it's going to miss, it will just randomly miss. I did quite a lot of testing with this on the first day, and it felt really inconsistent, and I think that's one of the biggest issues with the sniper rifle right now. Now, I've seen some people saying that this has been done intentionally to balance out keyboard and mouse no-scoping. I don't think that's the case, because A, that's really not an issue, to be honest. Like, yeah, keyboard and mouse is slightly better at no-scoping, but it's not like such an issue that it breaks the game, and B, even if that was the case, that is an awful way to fix that. I just think it needs to, the sniper rifle bullet needs to go directly where the crosshair is, not in some random spread around it, because that's just going to lead to such an inconsistent experience. Another big issue with the weapon sandbox is the plasma pistol. This thing is pretty much useless in this game, right? So the three main factors of it are just gone, right? So the overcharge shot barely has any tracking anymore. It feels like Halo 3's basically useless, right? It just barely tracks, it always misses. Then the single shot mode drains shields slower than the sidekick, and if you know anything about Halo, you know that plasma is meant to be the one that drains shields faster, and then, like ballistics, bullets are meant to be what kill people faster. and it's like the wrong way around in this game. And then thirdly, it now no longer EMPs vehicles when you overcharge it. That's been given to the shock weapons, so the plasma pistol doesn't have a place in this. It doesn't do anything. So if I were me, what I would do is I would make it so the single shot melts shields considerably faster. I would give the overcharge shot a little bit more tracking. Don't make it like Halo 5s or Halo 2s where it's like a laser beam, but give it a bit more tracking to make it viable. And also make it so it EMPs vehicles again. I think that's a big part of the plasma pistol, and I don't think that should be taken away. And on the topic of EMPing vehicles and that kind of whole area of the game, I'm not sold on how the shock rifle EMPs vehicles. I like the idea, and I don't really want them to take away the fact that it can EMP vehicles, but it's far too easy to EMP them with the shock rifle, because the shock rifle is, for all intents and purposes, just functions like a DMR, right? It's hit scan, and it can EMP vehicles in 2 shots, which means that if you just aim your gun at, for example, a Warthog and shoot it twice with a shock rifle, it will EMP it, right? There's no real skill involved with that. The success rate of EMPing stuff is significantly higher than when it was just a plasma pistol, and I think it's going to damage vehicle play, I think. However, I do have some ideas as to how they could fix this. So firstly, what they could do is they could make the shock rifle a projectile weapon, which means that you would have to lead your shots and maybe even, like the skewer, account for bullet drop as well, which would mean that you could still EMP vehicles with it, but it would take more skill and it wouldn't be too cheese for vehicle drivers. Or what they could do is maybe just increase the amount of shots required to EMP a vehicle. So right now you've got to land 2 out of the 4 shots in a magazine. Maybe bump that up to 3 or 4 shots. Or, and this might be a bit more crazy and a bit harder to do, but what they could do is give it an alt fire mode where you have to charge up a shot to EMP a vehicle, and it EMPs it in 1 shot, but it's like a charge shot that takes up more ammo in the magazine. And then the regular version, the regular shot, doesn't EMP vehicles, it just EMPs weapons, and like it basically does what it does already, just without the vehicle EMP factor. I think one of those 3 fixes would work. Right now, it seems to bully the plasma pistol too much out of its role, and at the same time feels a bit too powerful against vehicles. I mean, we'll have to give this a proper test this weekend with BTB, but I have a feeling that's what it's going to be like. There's still no grenade jumping, right? But the weird thing is with the grenade jumping, it exists in custom games, so you can increase the grenade knockback or the grenade like displacement. I don't know what the actual metric was. By default, it's on 10%, and if you bump it up to like 50 or 60%, it just feels like regular Halo grenade jumping. But for some reason, the default settings have it turned all the way down to 10%, which is quite confusing. I don't know why they do that. I think the regular, like all settings need to have that bumped up to 50% or 60 or whatever, so grenade jumping is a thing again, because again, that's one of those little things in Halo that's a small skill gap, but it exists. It allows for some really cool jumps to be made, some cool spots to be gotten into, so definitely bring it back. Okay, moving over to the equipment sandbox, I have some kind of all over the place thoughts. So I think the grapple shot and the repulsor are my 2 favorite pieces of equipment of all time, period. Better than any, or rather, I have more fun with them than any Halo 3 piece of equipment. But at the same time, I think broadly speaking, Infinite's equipment sandbox is considerably less interesting and less diverse and varied than Halo 3's. And I think the main reason for that is the lack of neutral equipment. To fix it, I would suggest adding maybe a trip mine or a grav lift or a bubble shield or regenerator field or something like that. It's just the fact that the 2 really fun pieces of equipment are only like for the player. They only affect the player, right? The grapple shot only affects you. The repulsor affects like enemies as well, but it's really like a personal thing. Unlike, for example, the trip mine, I throw that down and that can affect anybody. I think it definitely needs some neutral equipment. And also, it suffers from the fact that besides the grapple shot and the repulsor, and maybe thrust as well, but we didn't really get to use that this weekend, the threat sensor's alright, and the drop wall is a bit meh, honestly. It's so weak. That thing needs a heavy buff. And then, seemingly at least, that's all there is, right? So I think it would definitely benefit from some neutral equipment that would interact with both teams equally, to kind of complement things like the grapple shot and the repulsor. And also, I think the drop wall just needs a heavy buff. It's pretty much useless right now. I think the weekly challenges aren't well designed at all. I did all the weekly challenges in about a day, got them all done in a day, which was way too fast. They're way too easy to complete. I wouldn't be as against them if there was a progression system that underlay them, and they were like the kind of cherry on top of the progression system cake, but they are the progression system. Within a day of playing, I could no longer progress through the battle pass. All I could do was buy the tiers with credits. So the weeklies, they need changing, there need to be more of them, they need to be longer, they need to be harder to do. They just need, I think they need reworking, because right now they're far too easy and quick to finish. And then my final piece of feedback is something that's pretty small, but I'd love to see it happen. Per weapon offset. So right now the weapon offsets, which if you don't know, if you go into the UI settings, you can change where the weapons are on a screen. But right now, you can only change them based on weapon category. So, for example, pistols, rifles, heavy weapons, or melee weapons. I think they're the 4 offsets. I'd like to be able to change them individually. So instead of changing, like, I don't know, pistols, I want to change the sidekick or the disruptor or the BR or the commando. You guys get what I mean. Just let us change the offsets on a per weapon basis. And so, there they are. My brutally honest thoughts and opinions about the first part of Halo Infinite's second flight. Now, it might look like I spent more time talking about the critical things in this video than the positive things, but don't let that fool you. I had an absolute blast this weekend. I am loving this game so much. I can't wait to play more. There's so many cool things that you can do in this game that have been impossible in previous Halos. So many things that just feel new, but so Halo at the same time. Man, I cannot wait to play this game again. This BTB weekend cannot come soon enough. Whew! I can't wait. I cannot wait. So, with that said, I need to give my voice a rest because I'm pretty sure you can hear my voice is just slowly fading away. 25 hours of streaming in one weekend does that to you. So I want to give a massive thank you to SolarBark for becoming a new iconic one over on Patreon, and of course to all my other patrons for the continued support over there. Oh, and thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I will see you this Sunday for Halo Infinite BTB. I cannot wait. Thank you all once again for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one.